Welcome back to the Mac and Fish podcast. In our last segment of Signing Day Wrap-Up, we speak with Corey Bender. He is one of the publishers and scouts for the Florida Gators Rivals website. Corey is going to break down the 2021 Gators recruiting class. Once again, filling in for our host, McKinley Roll, will be our good friend Corey Long. Well, we're back for another segment of a recruiting roundup of signing day. Yesterday, the Florida Gators signed one of the top classes in the country, and we have a great guest today, Corey Bender, who works for Rivals.com Gator site. How are you doing, Corey?
Good, Fish. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's always fun. Signing day's changed. I mean, me and Corey have done a lot of these, but we talked about it with the early signing day and the way that the whole recruiting process has changed. It's not as tiring as it used to be. I remember being like physically and emotionally worn out, and maybe I was more invested in it, but it used to just seem way more tiring than it is now.
Yeah, I think also too with a lot of kids with social media, there's some kids signed, especially this year too with the pandemic. A lot of kids locked in their spot early on. And a lot of these schools didn't have too much drama unless they're waiting on some of these 5-star and 4-star kids at the end. But I think also with the early signing period and social media, a lot of these kids are kind of saying, hey, I want to be locked in before this date, or hey, I'm already signing early. So we kind of already know what's coming ahead of time, unless obviously there's a few kids that actually do reveal their decisions on signing day. But yeah, it's not as hectic. I feel like when it was just February, you get up at 5 in the morning. It was a lot more hectic, a lot more anxiety when it comes to tracking these kids. But I feel like it's been a lot more under control. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. A little bit easier on us media.
Yeah. I've looked at the, last two classes. I kind of group it together, and I go on some of the Florida Gator websites to check out like their responses. And I don't know, like, I think sometimes, Dan Mullen gets knocked as like, he's not this great recruiter, but I look at their classes. I mean, they signed some dudes. I mean, Jason Marshall is a dude. That Gervon Dexter last year, he's already shown what he's going to do. Tell us a little bit about like this year's class and what your thoughts are on the whole Gators recruiting class.
Yeah, no, I think also they have a pretty big DB class. They signed 5 guys. Defensive line was another big one. They were able to hold on to Tyreek Sapp. He was one in South Florida that was kind of rumored to be looking at Alabama at the time. I know Alabama kind of pumped the brakes a little bit as far as like where the class number was, but I think most of their drama was trying to hold on to a few guys. You already kind of knew at the end with Tumise, the 5-star DN, he went to A&M. I think a lot of Florida fans expected that. And then also Brashard Smith, that was another kid they were going at who stayed put with Miami. It wasn't too much drama towards the end, but at the same time, sometimes that's a good thing. You don't want all these drama signings that you might miss out. Your expectations are a little too high. But the class they did sign, like you said, Jason Marshall, I think he has the potential to be like a number 1 corner in Gainesville. I think he's a 5-star in my opinion. We have him as a high 4, but he has great size, great man-to-man corner, really good instincts. You can kind of throw him out on the island in one-on-one coverage. He definitely is confident, and you kind of want that swagger. Obviously, his teammate Corey Collier, we have him as a 5-star safety. Kind of an enforcer in the back of the defense who likes to come downhill and really make his presence known. A really good, solid tackler, plays with discipline. But overall, when you look at this class, man, they signed a lot of versatile kids. Another kid I'm very high on is Jeremiah Williams out of Alabama. He's a kid who can play buck on the edge, or he can play outside linebacker. Talk about drama. He was one towards the end. All along, we always knew his mom wanted him to stay home close to Auburn, but the kid wanted to go to Florida. And that was always the battle there. He ended up committing to Florida, but a day before signing day, or 2 days before, he said, hey, I'm actually going to wait till February. I'm not ready to sign. So everyone thought, dang, okay, this kid commits. He's going to end up out of the class. He changed his mind and says, no, that's where my heart is. I actually am going to sign on Wednesday. So that's a kid I think that was major in keeping him. They only signed 2 true linebackers in this class, him and DeJuan Black. So I think holding on to those 2 guys, it's a small class as far as that position, but I think they got 2 early contributors there. And I think DeJuan Black, he'll have the opportunity to play pretty early, man. He has that kind of freakish combination of size and speed where I feel like you can put him in a bunch of different positions. And Florida right now kind of needs that. They kind of lack discipline, I feel like, on defense this year. A lot of missed tackles, not wrapping up. And a lot of these guys they brought in are more sure hitters and guys that I think, like DeJuan Black, he's 2 years removed out of high school. And I think he can step in and kind of fill a role for them in the defense overall. So, you kind of scan it from top to bottom. Like you said, I mean, offensive line is probably the one position group people are pretty underwhelmed. They had a few kids that didn't qualify. Just today, they had one kid, Javante Gardner, out of Orlando Jones. I'm sure you're probably familiar with him. He signed with Jackson State. People considered it a flip, but he just couldn't get in academically. That was the issue there. So they lost 3 of their signees didn't sign along the outline. They would have had 5 altogether, but 3 of them couldn't sign because of academic reasons. So there's some work to do there, but overall, pretty solid class. We're number 7 in the country on rivals right now.
And I'm gonna go along the lines with the academic issues. This is not the first year that Florida under Mullins had issues with kids not qualifying. That is it something that they need to be? Do you think they need to be putting a greater emphasis on? Is having kids that they know are going to be able to sign on signing day? Because I think they had you had 4 or 5 the year before. All of a sudden, you're taking numbers away from yourself. It seems like by having kids that you're not able to see for 2 or 3 years, possibly.
Yeah, no, exactly, man. And I think some of these kids too, Corey, all along, there were some of these kids that we knew months ago that was the rumor as far as their grade situation. So, and that's the thing too. I've heard sources close to Florida, they were kind of frustrated knowing some of it was NCAA clearinghouse, signing up, kind of simple stuff, not even having their GPA. Some of them had to get their GPA up and all that, but some of it was just not submitting their paperwork in time. And that kind of falls on both sides, I feel with the coaching staff in the high school or just even the colleges telling those kids, hey, man, let's do this in September. Let's get this out of the way so that way when it comes to early sign period, you're set to go. And from what I was told, that was a situation with Javante Gardner, that it was an NCAA clearinghouse. The paperwork wasn't submitted in time. And it was just kind of, like you said, head-scratching stuff. But I think, too, with Florida going forward, they made a decision. I think the early sign period, that's why something like Trevante Rucker is another one, the receiver out of Vanguard. He's another one that was kind of going through the academic stuff. He didn't sign. And Florida kind of basically, I think with the early signing period, it allows them at least these last 2 months to hit the portal as far as having time to kind of replace those spots. Where I think last year, when the DeJuan Blacks class, a lot of those kids signed in February. So they don't sign in February. You're hoping in a few months it gets finalized. Then you lose those spots. Where I think this year, they're already planning to go in the portal pretty hard here soon. And obviously Austin Barber, the kid who committed today, he was part of that issue, is at least resolving one spot in the O-line. So they knew they weren't going to get these kids. So they said, hey, if we can't get these kids, let's offer Barber because we know he's a Florida kid. He wants to be in Gainesville. And so they filled one of those spots. But overall, though, I agree with you, man. It's kind of, I think you have to do your homework a little bit more, or at least kind of, I'm not saying separate from these kids early on, but it benefits the kid too. I mean, I'm surprised Gardner signed with Jackson State because it's only happened over the last 24 hours, but it puts the team and the kid in limbo as far as, roster spots and then the kid finding a landing spot. And I think you have to do your homework a little bit more, or at least kind of have a decision made months before that rather than waiting to the last second. And like you guys said, having a spot wide open and not filling it.
Yeah, Corey, I think me, Corey Long, and McKinley have had about 6 podcasts on Weekend Updates talking about Kyle Pitts. The guy's been phenomenal. You look at the 2 tight ends they've signed. I mean, I really, really like Nick, Elksness is how would you pronounce his name? I don't even know how to pronounce it, but
I'm laughing because all the podcasts I talk about his name, I'm always giving a new version of his name. So
my God.
I think it's Alchemist.
I think this kid has potential to play on Sundays one day. And I had the opportunity to watch Gage Wilcox last year at the Miami camp. He was also at the FIU camp. He's a little different. He's more of a wide receiver that plays tight end, and you could flex him out wide. You could kind of put him out of the backfield as an H-back. Mullen, is going to be able to do a lot of great things. Tell us a little bit about those 2 tight ends they've signed.
No, I'm happy you brought up Alcadis, man, because I've been raving about this kid ever since the Rivals camp. But we have Wilcox ranked higher, and I'll just go on and say it. I'm a bigger fan of Alcadis, man. I think his frame, he's about 6'5.5", about 225, but he has a frame that's going to fill up nicely. And I think he's fluid after the catch, more of a pass catching tight end, really good kid, mature kid. I feel like he's one in Nolan's system where I feel like he can be in a year or two. I'm not saying a year, but 2 to 3 years. He could be a solid tight end for him, especially when he hits that weight room. I think he's going to blow up nicely in a good way. And I think he has so much potential, man. I think that kid's a mid to high 4-star, honestly. That's what I think he is. I know the next ranking update, I'm going to be really pushing Rivals to bump him. As far as Wilcox, Wilcox, I'm a fan of him. There's times where I actually thought he'd be a better DN, but that was like 2 years ago. And I know his stats aren't as gaudy as some of the other tight ends, but he's another complementary piece. He's really reliable in the red zone. I think with Wilcox too. He's another one who has a frame that should expand pretty good. And I think he's more of a complete tight end. They're both in that mold where they both have to add some weight. But I think with Wilcox, I like his ability in the red zone. He shows some ability to go off one foot to really high point the ball, take advantage of his size. I think Elkinis is better in the open field when it comes to operating after the catch. But they're both complementary pieces, and they both really wanted to be in Gainesville. That was like the offer they both really wanted. And that's why once Elkinis decommitted from Penn State, he got the Florida offer. I think many of us knew him well. Like, okay, this kid's going to go to Gainesville. You see what – even last year, I know Pitts had a remarkable year this year, but even last year, once Trask took over, he started targeting Pitts. That was like his number one guy. Because if you remember, Franks didn't really target Pitts that much when Franks was the quarterback. Like, he really took off when Trask took over. So I think just seeing the tight end production and then really just seeing what the success he could have in Gainesville was a no-brainer. But I think with those two, man, you're never going to live up to the Pitts expectations. He's like a generation-type talent. But I think you have two guys to go along with Zipperer as a young guy. You have a solid tight end room. I think you can have a lot of guys that can complement each other and do good things in the coming years.
I think I don't know this for sure. I have a feeling there's going to be a pretty significant group of departures when the season's over beyond Trask and Pitts. I mean, their receiving core is loaded, but all those kids are NFL-type kids, and will all have an opportunity to stay or leave. Florida's done well in the portal. Van Jefferson, Grimes, Shorter. They've gotten big-time receiving talent. If we're looking at what they're getting in this class, maybe what they've got in the last class from the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, where do you see this offense at this upcoming year, next year? It looks like it's going to be a young group this year. You might have a lot of inexperience at some key positions.
Yeah, Troy, I think the one thing just overall when I look at next year's roster, I think it's like the D-line. I think next year's the D-line is going to be interesting because you have Kyrie Campbell, who's he's a senior. I know some of these guys could come back next year as well because, the eligibility rule with whole COVID. But then you have TJ Slayton, who's most likely going to the NFL. You have a lot of inexperience along the D-line. I think at Buck, you have a lot of pass rushers. You have Chris Bogle, Brenton Cox. I think Jeremiah Moon will likely come back, and I think that would be huge. He's been hurt a lot. But, yeah, no, exactly, man. There's going to be a lot of inexperience at a lot of positions. But I think overall it's the D-line where I'm kind of most looking at it as far as youth. And then even receiver too, though, man. You got Tony leaving. You got Grimes leaving. Rick Wells is funny because he didn't really play much during his career, at Florida. But I think he'll come back for another year. His role's kind of increased the last 5 games. So you have some experience coming back, but that receiver room is going to be extremely young. I mean, I think the oldest one coming back will be Jacob Copeland, and if Rick Wells comes back. And I'm not saying Copeland was really good, but obviously I think from what most people thought they're going to get a little bit more out of him. So you look at the receiver room too, it is kind of not proven as much. I mean, you have Justin Shorter, who's came on and flashed at times this year, but he's a bigger guy. He comes back as a redshirt junior. But, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of different positions. But I think tight end, though, too. I think they'll be okay at tight end. It's not going to be – they're not going to light the world on fire, in my opinion. I mean, they have reliable guys. But I think next year, man, they're going to have to hit the portal. They reached out to Marcus Fleming, the kid went to Nebraska, out of Miami last year, a slot receiver. They did reach out to Corey Durden. Obviously, he ended up at NC State. That was the kid they really wanted. Those are the 2 main guys they reached out to in the portal. Some of the guys, from what I'm told, they're going to make a strong run in the coming months. But a lot of the guys actually haven't went in the portal yet. So they're going to have to hit some key positions, man. I thought Durden was going to be important just because I think you're going to rely on next year with Gervon Dexter inside. And Gervon's a really good player. But at the end of the day, it's like he still has, in my opinion, he still has a ways to go. I mean, he's not really – I know he's going to be a really good player, but he's not going to guy like, hey, you step in, he's going to fix everything. So
Wait a second. You're saying Corey Durden, who, like every FSU fan, wanted to send packing all year. Florida was interested in this kid.
Yeah, they reached out to him. But didn't with Durden, though, from what I know, didn't he opt out, though, after 2 or 3 games? He didn't really play much.
He played most of the year.
Most of the season before he opted
But I thought the season before though. I mean, like I said, I don't watch every FSU game.
Yeah. Now he played last year the whole season, and I think
his stats were okay though. But I don't know like how that's stats though. It doesn't reflect.
He's from Newberry, so I mean it made sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Reach out.
Yeah, if you work on next year though, like Gervon, Jalen Humphreys hasn't played much inside. Zachary Carter comes back, but he's more of a strong side DN. But they have a lot of holes they have to fix, man. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, they have good players. I mean, even quarterback though. Like you have Emory Jones. There's been rumors of him possibly going in the portal. I mean, that's not confirmed, but it's been all over the place rumor wise. So
you talk about the core. There's two positions I want to go on before we get off this call. Is for sure is you talk about the quarterback position. You know, the one thing is no denying, and I could argue this with anybody. I think Dan Mullen has proven he's one of the best developers of quarterbacks. I mean, Dak Prescott was a no-name quarterback. Trask went from like he never played in high school. The kid's going to go in the first round of the draft, in my opinion. I saw Carlos Del Rio Wilson last year at the Miami camp. I saw him with Jake Garcia. I like Jake a little more. But the one thing I could tell you is Carlos could throw that ball. I mean, he could spin it, and he's got a big-time arm. And he's got one of the best quarterback coaches there is as far as developing. What do you think of Carlos and some of the other quarterbacks that are maybe on the roster that are going to take over for Trask?
Yeah, I think with Del Rio, and I'll touch on Jalen Kitna as well because I'll start with him just real quick, just before that way I don't forget him. Kitna's the other quarterback in the class out of Texas. I honestly think, truly, man, like this is just my opinion. I think he's a 4-star talent. I think in like 3 years he could be the starting quarterback for Florida. I think Kitna, like if you watch his film, he throws a beautiful deep ball, great ball placement. He's sprouted up to about 6'4.5". He has obviously that quarterback pedigree with his dad. He has a lot of intangibles, good pocket awareness. I think of all the 22 signees in the class, I think Kitna and Elkinis are the two most overlooked guys in the whole class, to be honest with you. And I think people I'm not obviously comparing it to the Kyle Trask situation, but it's kind of like that. You have Del Rio that comes in as the Elite 11 guy, right? And then obviously the 1 year, but then you had Trask, he was the second quarterback coming in too. And those second quarterbacks kind of get overlooked a little bit. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised in the coming years when it comes to Kitna. And he could be a guy that could start for Florida, I honestly think, before his career is over with. I think, Fish, if you haven't seen Jalen Kitna's highlights, watch him after we get off this call and tell me what you think later on. And then you have Del Rio too, man. He can spin the ball. He's really good on the run too when it comes to throwing on the run. I mean, he's athletic enough if he has to get going, but he's a pass first guy that really likes to throw the ball in tight windows. Another guy like Kitna who's grown 2 inches in the last year and a half. He's kind of sprouted a little bit more and he's about 6'3", a legit 6'3" now. When I first met him, he was around 6'1". But good kid, good character, leadership qualities, and you have two different guys. And I think I always echo Kitna because he's not really ranked the highest. But I think with having Dan Mullen, I think that's one of the best quarterback coaches in the work with.
I've gone and looked at the history of guys that have done really well. I mean, Art Briles, when he was at Baylor, he did a phenomenal job. Mullen's done a great job. Tedford was unbelievable. I mean, if you ever go and want to see a guy that did phenomenal, Jeff Tedford's probably one of the best quarterback evaluators and talent. I mean, he's had like 10 first-round picks at all his schools, but I trust Mullen when it comes to quarterbacks. When I see he signs somebody, I'm going to go, all right, this guy knows what he's doing. But, you talked about one of the positions they're losing a lot. One kid I'm very high on, I don't know how you feel about it, and I know he came up big last night, Marcus Burks. I think the kid is one of the best receivers in the state. And the reason I like him is you can't teach size and speed. The kid could flat out – he's one of the fastest receivers in the state, and he's 6'3". I think he's a kid that can make an impact like next year. What do you think of Marcus?
Yeah, I remember last year he had his breakout game versus Venice, if you remember. He had like 7 catches for 220 yards against Venice, and the kid had like multiple deep balls that was really extending the field. Same type of thing, man. He's a big kid. He's a long strider. Not only, like you said, he's fluid too. He does a good job of adjusting the ball. But like you said, you can't teach size and speed. He's fluid when getting north and south. Does a good job of timing his jump. Knows how to take advantage of his size over smaller DBs. But I thought this year he took a next step as far as his intermediate routes, working underneath, really operating after the catch. I know like 2-3 weeks ago he had a game where he had 9 catches. A lot of those were slants and underneath routes, and then he turned upfield and racked up some yards after the catch too. So I feel like you have a mismatched guy, like you said, Fish, a guy who can extend the field, very fluid, run past DBs. But also, I think this year he's more of a complete wide receiver. And he climbed, I think, 68 spots in the Rivals 250 not too long ago. He really climbed, even despite missing time. He was hurt this year too. But Chad Simmons, he runs at the Florida now. He gave him a good sized bump in the rankings, and I think he's a guy, like you said, next year. It's kind of like when Xavier Henderson came out. He was another kid. Talking about next year, I think he'll have a pretty big role next year.
I'm a huge Xavier Henderson fan.
That the All-American Bowl game when he was getting behind the defense, he was just running like a deer. Like him and Marcus Burke are both so light on their feet. You know what I mean? They run so effortlessly for bigger guys. And I think you have two guys for the next coming years, two guys you can put all the way outside wide and just let them do their thing. And I think they both can get up, vertical and, take advantage of those mismatches.
Corey, you got anything else, man, Corey?
Yeah, well, I guess the last thing I wanted to have was that, the running back situation is, they've got some backs. I think maybe the backs are a little underutilized. They didn't get one in this class, but they've got DeMarcus Bowman coming in through transfer from Clemson. Where's the running back situation going to be next year? Are they looking at Bowman to kind of jump in and jump ahead of these guys? I think Malik is a very good back. I think he should get more opportunities than he's gotten. I mean, where do you see this running back situation happening in Florida?
Yeah, they're really not going to lose anyone after this year. I think Dameon Pierce will enter the season as the starter just based off what he's proven so far. Bigger guy, between the tackles guy, but all of them are pretty good out of the backfield as all-purpose threats in the game. But I think with Malik Davis, he's kind of been hot and cold with Florida. We're Tampa guys, right? Like I'm a big fan of Malik, and I think at times what made him drop down the depth chart at times was he had some fumbles last year, and then obviously he had the injury, right? So I think he had some times where the injury set him back, and I believe from what I heard from people, he just wasn't trusting that injury. When you come back, it's a mental thing. He's came back, and I know when he against Auburn last year, he had a fumble on their side of the field, and I think the whole doghouse thing, he the other guys went ahead of him, but he's really came on this year, man. He had some big games. I think it was against Georgia too, out of the backfield catching the ball. I think he's hungry, man. I think he's going to put up a good fight for that starting position next year. Bowman should be signed as far as everything official for next year. But I don't think it's going to be a gimme. I think Dameon Pierce will enter as the number one back, and then we'll have those guys working out. I think Naquan Wright, he's the guy I'm kind of happy for because he had injuries in high school and quiet kid, pretty well reserved, just kind of goes about his business. He really played a lot this year and got more and more carries as the season went on and had big performances, especially when it comes to catching the ball.
Georgia,
Yeah, so his confidence has really grown. So you have, I think, Malik, Naquan, and Dameon Pierce, all three are coming back, and all three of them have had pretty solid years. They don't have a pure number one back who's lit it on fire when it comes to running the ball. They really kind of interchange them a lot. But now you add Bowman coming in, who's a pure just, let me get the ball productive, a big-time back out of high school. Man, that running back room is going to be super interesting. I think that's going to be the most interesting position battle next year. Just is it going to be Pierce, the household name, the senior at the time? Or is Malik going to surpass him and really kind of break out like he did as a freshman with all those yards? Or Naquan Wright, man, who's been reliable. He's a true all-purpose back. And then, then obviously you have the newcomer who everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to see Bowman light the world on fire for Florida, because it was almost fit like a glove out of high school. Everyone thought he was going to go to Gainesville, then he went to Clemson. So I think people are just to see him in a Gators jersey, I think people are going to be geeked up about, to finally see him on that roster. So I think running back, that's going to be the most interesting battle going into next year.
Well, Corey, it's great to get you on. I know we tried to get you on earlier and you did a little of that avoidance of us. You did a little you did that Bowman shake on us. Got loose, but we caught up to you, and we really appreciate you coming on. I know Corey, respects you a ton, and so do I. And tell us a little bit about how people could, follow up with you as far as social media.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Corey Bender, just COREY, then _ Bender, BENDER. Our team site is just Gators Territory with an S at the end of Gator, just straight through Gators Territory. And the same thing as the website, GatorsTerritory.com. We're always putting out content, man, at least 5 to 7 stories every single day. And we're also running a promo, man. If you sign up now, it's free cover. We have free premium access to January 29th if you use Gators NSD for National Sign Day. Gators NSD for the promo code. And we've had a lot of people jump on, man. It's been a pretty good week. And
well, we'll send you a link of this once we're done. We should have it by tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
put it
yeah,
on the
for-
board and everything. I'll put it on the board and everything. I'll tweet it out and everything for you.
Well, you were great, man. You're a great guest, and we'll get you back on again. So,
Oh, give me no, man. Anytime, man. I'm not avoiding you.
all right, man. You gave me that stiff arm, that
Yeah,
Heisman
no,
stiff
I'm
arm,
not-
man.
yeah. I got you, bro. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I knew when I said Corey Long was coming on. I finally broke the code of how to get you on. I knew. Yeah, I know you. All right, man. It's all great, man. Well, you have a great night, man.